Hi, welcome to my podcast, Becoming a Cut Flower Grower. I'm your host, Lydia, and I'm here to share my year of growing and selling cut flowers. I'll be giving you the lowdown on everything I'm doing and sharing all the highs and lows, the good times and the inevitable disasters, all in real time. Join me on my cut flower journey, starting right now. Hello, and a very warm welcome to this evening's episode. It is Friday, the 24th of October, 2025. I listened back to the last episode and wow, didn't I sound a grumpy lady? So apologies for that. I really was in a pretty poisonous mood, but it's Friday evening. I've just had a coffee with a shot of Bailey's in it and I'm feeling very warm and a little bit, no, much happier. So we're going to get straight into it tonight. I have decided not to do a sort of news section to update you on everything that's going on at the beginning because listening back to the last few episodes, I spend a disproportionate amount of time just yakking about what I've been up to that has no relevance whatsoever for becoming a cut flower grower. So I thought, no, we're going to go back to basics tonight. We're going to get straight down into it. So if you listen to last week's episode, I was talking about getting into retail because I've done wholesale only in year one. And in order to do it, I came up with a really complicated spreadsheet with a breakdown of the flowers and how I would price it and how the individual stems would be priced and how it would all work. And it all got a little bit complicated because I don't really know what I'm doing. I had a bit of a brain freeze. So I decided after that to come at it from a different angle, a little bit like a great white shark circling around a dead whale in the ocean. I'm coming at it from a different angle. I'm going to take a bite out of it and see what happens. So I want to flesh it out, roll it past you and see what you think. Now, you won't be surprised to hear that I have made another spreadsheet. I can't help myself, I'm afraid. What I thought I would do would be for each month of the year, and actually I've done it into March, April, and then May, June, and then July, August, and then September, October. Recognizing, of course, that there is a lot of nuance and flexibility within those categories, but I actually did this spreadsheet on a piece of paper and I didn't have enough space to do all of the months. So that's just how I've done it. So I've got those different months going along the top. And then down the bottom, down the side rather, I've got category for focals, spikes, discs, fillers, and the airy things. Now, this is a little bit more of a detailed breakdown than I would normally work on. I've sort of been doing focals and maybe spikes, but then just filler and thinking really filler just more of like a foliage rather than actually a flowering filler. So I've gone with these 5 categories, which is what Erin at Florette has suggested. And so I'm still kind of getting my head around it because some things, when I was deciding which plants to put in which square, I was like, well, is it airy or is it a filler? And so I probably spent more time trying to work out which category to put the things in than was strictly necessary. But tell you what, it's been so useful. So, for example, for I don't know, let's pick an easy one. May, June, for example, the month of May, June. What spike flowers am I growing at the moment? So I have got foxgloves, I've got cruspedia, bearded iris, veronica, and then I need to buy alliums and sow cruspedia. So that month, it's like, okay, I've got quite a good selection of spike flowers. And then if you look at, for example, July/August, what would I have in the disc section? And I've got echinaceas, helenium, rudbeckia, hydrangea, echinops, cosmos, scabious, and strawflower. And again, I've got all of those, or I've got the seeds ready to go. And then, for example, in the May, June category for filler, I've got mint, eucalyptus, pittosporum, rosemary, and feverfew. So, what the advantage for me is laying it all out visually is like I'm a really visual person anyway. So to see it all written down and then fill all of the boxes in with the flowers that I'm going to have for those categories of flower type and then the months, it really clearly shows me the months where I don't have a single thing available. So for March, April, I've put fillers in like, not fillers, sorry, I've put focals in tulips and daffs. And then a spike flower, I've put aquilegia. But I have absolutely no discs and no airy things in those categories. And I'm thinking, well, perhaps that's just because it's just too early in the season for me where I am, or it means that I need to do a better search and find out what plants would be available then? Or are people just doing single item bouquets of tulips or daffs and maybe some foliage, like, I don't know, mint or eucalyptus or pittosporum or something like that, and that's it? They're not trying to do an entire mixed bouquet because we just don't necessarily have that much growing at that time of year. And then I looked in the September, October airy section, and I've really only got statice, jewels of opar, rose hips, and fennel. Well, I don't know about the rose hips and the jewels of opar. I've never grown them before, so I can't guarantee that's going to be a success. So I'm thinking, well, I really need to bulk up that category. So it's actually been really, really helpful to do this spreadsheet because it's basically showing me what I would have available to put in a mixed bouquet in all of those months running through the whole of the summer. And where there aren't as many as I would like, it's showing me exactly what else I either need to go and buy or I need to grow the seeds. So that has been actually probably my most helpful spreadsheet that I've done recently. I think the pricing one was just getting really out of hand. I think it was really coming at it from the wrong angle. It's got to be, what have I got flowering at all these different times of year to be able to put something together in a bouquet? And that's what I'm going to have. So it's going to feed into the crop plan because it's showing me very clearly what I've already got and what is actually missing already. So super helpful. Now, I had a couple of really fantastic questions from one of my listeners in Sweden who has been following me on Instagram for ages, and she's wonderful. She's growing some fantastic vegetables and flowers out there, and I love looking at her posts. She asked me a couple of really good questions, and I hope she won't mind if I answer them on here for all of you because I think they're very, very good, and I think the answers will be useful. So she's talking about perennials and them being, are they better because they're more reliable in terms of bloom times, and therefore could you just fill in the gaps with annuals? And I think this is a really excellent point that she's raised because she's absolutely right. You know, with your perennials, I have found anyway that they are much more reliable in terms of when they're going to flower. Now there are obviously climate issues and things that will affect that. So here in the UK, we had like a really weird year for weather, and everything was about 3 to 4 weeks earlier than it would normally be, and that's been the same kind of across the board. But generally speaking, she's absolutely right that with your perennials, you kind of know exactly within a few weeks of what is going to be ready when. And you don't get that guarantee with the annuals because they're just subject to so many more different variables. Now I know that you can find out the number of days from when you sow them to when they will actually bloom. And that is true. And so you can do your sowing, say something takes 100 days to bloom from when you sow it. You can work out exactly when you want it to bloom, count back 100 days, sow it, and Bob's your uncle. But of course, with the seeds, I think there are so many more variables and things that can go wrong and environmental impacts on that because you could find after a couple of weeks that you've got bad seed. Either it didn't germinate at all, or it has germinated, but then it damps off, or it doesn't damp off, but you put it outside and you have a really cold snap, or you forget to bring it in from the cold frame or from outside where it's just been hanging out for the day and it dies, or it's set back, or it's, do you know what I'm getting at? There's like all of these factors that play in. And certainly with me putting my annuals out this year, I did absolutely masses of successional sowing. I had stuff coming out of my ears. But when it came to it, I couldn't get it into the ground because the ground was baked to a crisp and we didn't have any water on the plot. So I couldn't support them. So some of them stayed at home where they got support, but it meant they didn't go into the ground. So I basically held them back. So the roots spiraled. They didn't do that well. And it was all just a complete kerfuffle. So things can go wrong with the annuals. So I think she's absolutely right to say that the perennials are far more reliable, and there may be a little bit of a fluctuation in when they bloom, but you know that they're going to pretty much sort themselves out and do their own thing. And in fact, I hardly watered my perennials this year on the plots, despite the fact that we had a terrible drought, because they had their roots right down. You know, they were established, they got going, they had access to water further down, and they were absolutely fine. Her second question was, how many peonies did I buy last Saturday? And the answer to this is I bought about 20 eyes. So I think actually I got 19 eyes, and they're in three different clumps because I got some Kansas, Duchesse de Nemours, and then the Festive de Maxima. And I can't remember now which of the clumps was the biggest, but one of them was definitely larger, much larger than the others. So that one's probably got about 12 eyes on it. And I'm going to cut it into three, a bit like you do with the dahlias, like with a saw, I think, because the peonies are incredibly tough and robust. Um, and then, as I say, I've got, yeah, so I've got those guys, and then I've got maybe a few already on the plot that I bought from a grower last year. They were babies. They're pretty small. They've probably only got one, maybe two eyes in them already. And then I think I've bought 9 new ones. I'd have to check my record, but I have just bought some new ones. And then I've got a dozen that are in my garden that I have decided to take out of my garden and put them up on the plot. And they've been going for maybe 8 or 9 years. So they're pretty good sized, healthy plants, and they make the most fantastic blooms. So there'll be a few up there this year, not as many as I would like, obviously, but a few. And then her final question was, will I grow cornflowers again? Now, this I'm sure is based on all the stuff that I've said, all the dramas that I had with the cornflowers this year, because I really went big on cornflowers without realizing quite how high maintenance they are in terms of the deadheading. So they weren't that thirsty. I didn't spend a lot of water on them. I did spend quite a bit of time because I realized I would need to stake them, and just as well because they actually got really enormous. So they were about 5 foot tall in the end. No, maybe not. Between 4.5 and 5 foot tall, which is pretty enormous. And at the start of the season, I did this sort of complicated staking business with lots of twine to support them all. And I'm very glad I did. But then the season got really busy and I stopped. So they kind of had this support that went from the ground about halfway up the plant, and then they kind of fell over a bit, fell into each other a little bit, and it did get quite complicated. And I spent hours of my life this year deadheading them. And then I didn't sell them for very much because my wedding florist had access to wholesale ones, and they just come in, they're super cheap. And those prices do not reflect the work that actually goes into them. But in answer to the question, I am going to grow them in 2026, but I'm going to do, I think, just white ones, I have decided. Now, I've harvested quite a lot of seed. So, depending whether I get myself together and get organized, I'm either just going to sow all of the seed and have done with it. But I do remember picking the seed, harvesting the seed in two distinct trays, so that I have got a tray of just white. And I am going to do them because I think they are the most beautiful flower. They will be a lovely filler slash airy. I'm not entirely sure which category those guys are supposed to go into. I don't think it matters. It will do the same thing. And the bees, all of the pollinators, absolutely loved them, which is clearly where I'm going wrong, because they all got pollinated and then started to form seed heads, and I was furiously deadheading them all. But that for me is part of the point of having the plot and growing flowers, is to encourage all the pollinators. And I know it's the exact opposite of what you need as a flower grower, because you don't want all your flowers to be pollinated, but I don't care about that. I'd rather have lots of bees up there. So yes, the answer is I am going to grow them, and I am going to net them to within an inch of their lives next year. I don't want anybody to be able to move muscle or wobble around or fall into anybody else. because I just think they are the most gorgeous flower. And the more time I spent with them, well, partly the more I hated them because they were just so labor intensive, but the more I just completely fell in love with them because when you're deadheading them, obviously, you have to get pretty much up close to them. And I just kept thinking every time I was doing it, these flower heads are so beautiful. Like the detail on them is extraordinary. And I don't know about you, but some of the flowers just really grab your attention, like things like the peonies and the dahlias and the roses. They just evoke this sort of response, like they're just big and voluptuous and gorgeous and like really over the top, and they draw a lot of attention. But the cornflowers, they were so understated, like just the most beautiful, beautiful, classy little flowers. They were, yeah, I really, really actually fell in love with them. I will just have to watch how much time I spend on them. That is the problem. I don't know that I could make them particularly profitable, as in like 35% margin or whatever else we're supposed to be aiming for. But if I just don't, I think if I just don't deadhead them, I think this is going to be the secret. Is just cut them nice and low, sell them to the wholesale in bigger sprays, and they can worry about the deadheading of the little things in their own time rather than me doing it. Um, so yeah, that is the answer to that. And thank you for those fantastic questions because I think they're helpful for everybody that's listening as well. Now, weekend plans. Lots of plans for this weekend. I have got quite a few shrubs and woodies that I want to get into the ground. So if you listen to the last episode, you'll know I went shopping when my wholesaler had a sale on, and I've got some hydrangea limelights to get in, some eucalyptus baby blue to get in, and I bought a cotinus, and a lilac, and I want those to go in as well. And there are a few other things just lurking around that need to go in the ground. I also want to spread out my foxgloves because I have been collecting foxgloves from all over the place, and sort of just I dumped them all in a sort of nursery foxglove bed, and they've all put on loads of growth. They're all much, much bigger, and they're all kind of squashing each other out. So I just want to spread them out a little bit and then start moving the perennials that I have in the ground at the moment to one of the new 4 beds that Nigel cleared the turf on. Because as you know, I've had this dilemma about where to be putting things because the soil obviously changes as the plot goes along based on how much it's been cultivated over the years. And some areas have been, they've had the chickens on them, they've been super cultivated, they've had vegetables growing, and the soil is fabulous. And then as you move further away from the feed room, the soil quality decreases. And I've been thinking about this long and hard and thinking, do I really want to put my new plants down in the area where the soil is not quite so good? Or do I want to keep them up where the soil is good? And I think the answer really has to be is to put these guys where the soil is best so that they have the best chance of getting going. Because I think the older perennials like the heleniums, the Verbena bonariensis, the rudbeckias, um, the achillea, really big, decent sized plants. And I think they will transplant really well. And I think the babies, so the Veronicastrum and the Physostegia and all the other bits and pieces that are coming over the course of the next few months, I think those guys really need to go into the soil that is the very best quality to give them the best start at life. And ditto with the roses when they all arrive. I really think that they should go in the best soil as well. I think certainly with the more valuable items like the roses, I really don't want to put them somewhere where they're going to be unhappy and sulk because I need them to hit the ground running and get going so that they flower next year. So there is quite a lot to do this weekend, and the soil is still lovely. It's all still very workable and very nice. And I also need to label all the dahlias because the pen that was used to label them all last year, all the ink has come off, and I think while they're all still flowering so beautifully, I need to just redo the names on those and maybe move some of them around a little bit. Um, just because we've got some gaps where one or two haven't done so well, and then some of the others are enormous. So I think that would be a good idea before they all get cut down and then heavily mulched. So loads to be getting on with, and I'm sure you've got plenty to be doing as well. It's a really busy time of year. I think the next person that tells me, "Oh, you're putting the garden to bed," I will just run them over with my car, because this is not a time for putting anything to bed. There's so much work to do in the gardens right up until Christmas and then beyond into the new year. So there's no question of anything being put to bed. I mean, not that it's a garden, it's a flower field anyway, but you know what I mean. So that's going to be me for tonight. That's everything I wanted to talk about, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And if you're on half term, I hope you're having a lovely time. And do please come back and join me on Tuesday, when I will have more updates about what is going on with me trying to become a cut flower grower. Okay, all the very best.